And then I went to the webinar after a couple minutes and everyone in the chat was saying, you're sharing the wrong screen, like your microphone's messed up, all this stuff. So now I always ask at the beginning. So it looks like in the chat, everyone can see and hear us. I'm seeing Valeria, Sarish, Tiwar. All right, fantastic. Now, some of you are doing this already, but could you also let us know where in the world are you joining from? Now, Roman, something that I've noticed about you, just like from your website, from your profiles, is how international your audience is. And indeed, like I love at Teachable how we get people here from all over the world. And I'm seeing people already from Portugal, Belgium, Norway, India, US, Germany, Caribbean, Portugal, England, Indonesia, Switzerland, South Africa, UAE, Kenya, Ukraine, Massachusetts, Taiwan, Mexico, Hungary, Kenya, London, Portugal, Wales, Russia, England, Maryland, Madrid, Puerto Rico, Ukraine, Turkey, Italian in the USA. All right. From Mars, says Angito. All right, so we have people here from all over. Now, just an important note before we get started. So, Roman, before you take it away, I know you're eager to share your presentation with us, but I just wanted to have, there's some important logistical things that everyone needs to know about this before we actually get started. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen because I just need to show this to you. So you're watching this webinar right now. You know, you're looking at a screen that looks like this and you're watching this exciting webinar. Now, if you're seeing anything be blurry or hard to read or out of focus, or if it's difficult you can't read something, just click the gear icon on the bottom right, the settings gear, and then make sure the resolution is the highest quality. So 720p. And if anything is too small, like you're having trouble reading something, you can click the full screen button on the bottom right to make it bigger. You'll just need to exit full screen to ask a question. Now, Roman is going to be giving the presentation and he can't really look at the chat. So I'll be keeping an eye on the chat and writing down all your questions. So ask your questions during the webinar and Roman will be answering them at the end or might even answer some during the presentation. But Roman, for me, it's 2:02 p.m. here in New York City. I think you said Slovakia, it's 6 hours ahead. So I think that we've given enough time for the last minute stragglers. So let's go ahead and let's dive in and get started.
Yeah, so thank you very much for
Wait, Roman, I think your audio might be muted. Oh, wait, sorry.
Is it?
There we go. You're all set. You're all set.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So thank you again for the introduction. Once again, I will now try to share the screen and run the presentation. So I hope everything looks good.
Yep, perfect.
Okay. So hello again, I'm Roman and I'm a designer. I have around like 15 years of experience with UI design, e-commerce design, and lately mostly emphasis on 3D design. I worked for clients such as Google, NVIDIA, Waze, etc. So I have some experience with incorporating 3D into my design workflow. And that's something I really want to talk about today, where you should begin with 3D if you're interested in it. And most of all, why I think it's important for designers to incorporate this in their design. So today, I just want to quickly go over these reasons, and then we'll jump into live workshop session. And I will show you around the Blender. That's the tool I use for the 3D. And yeah, then I want to show you like how it led me to creating basically a turn in my career and to create stuff that I use to teach Blender all around the world. So, and yeah, and then we'll have probably some time for Q&A and then something for the road at the end. So first of all, let's start with why. And I really want to make the case for the designers to look at 3D as a tool that they can reach out to help them with their workflow. And whether you're a designer or a content creator, I think it can be really useful to you. And 3D is really huge in 2020. And I already thought it was huge in 2019, but it's still growing. but some might say it's just a trend and that it'll pass and something like that in a few years. But excuse me. I don't really see it that way. And apart from obvious large industries like movies, visual effects, games, and architectural visualizations, which I won't go into right now because the curve for getting into those industries is a little bit different. So apart of those things, it can be seen as a trend mostly because of the rise of popularity with 3D illustrations on the website. And you can see this all over the Dribbble, Instagram. Many designers are reaching out to 3D tools and incorporating them into their like hero illustrations and stuff like that. But apart from that, there are multiple levels of how you can use the 3D in your work. And this includes like product animations and production of content, particularly articles and stuff for social media, several infographics and stuff like that. And then my favorite part are like interface and real-time prototypes of things that you want to show someone how you can build something, or HMIs for cars, devices. And last but not least, there's a picture on the right with the beautiful AR concept. And we are not quite there yet, but I think this is really where how the future looks like for the design of things. And with the technology catching up with technologies like Oculus, HTC Vive, Microsoft experimenting with HoloLens, and Apple pushing their own like ARKit platform, and Android too. Basically, I think the technology is there. It just needs to get a little bit more intelligent to like recognize better surroundings and recognize surfaces. But for me, I really believe that this is where we are going in terms like 5 to 10 years with interfaces and apps. And that's why I think it's really good investment to like learn these skills and at least be mindful around about the things that you can do with 3D. So I want to first start with website illustrations, and most obvious, of course, are the hero illustrations where you can take some nice visual concept and implement it with your website hero with some nice typography and really create a vibrant landing page that can engage users. And apart from that, because this doesn't end here, once you have this like hero concept, you can go much deeper and actually try to incorporate 3D with your content design. So as you can see here down on the left, I've extracted a little bit of that design to use it as an illustration for these like features. So whether it's features, services, or multiple pages, articles, you can still like take your concept and design system you built in the 3D and expand on that more on your website. And you can also create all kinds of elements like buttons, icons, avatars, you name it. So I think 3D can be very useful for website design. And it doesn't have to be complex. Like there's a really large range of complexity you can reach to, from really simple geometry, like you can see here with the sushi, all the way to like full character design. You can see here on the right. So you don't actually need to be, you can start right away with skill you have to try create something beautiful, basically. So, and then when it comes to like content design, it doesn't end with websites, because you can, of course, expand this to apps and printed content. And of course, on the website, when animation comes into play, you can create all kinds of micro interactions and Easter eggs, like you can see here with the box packing all the books with a thank you message. And as long as you're careful, not going over the board with the stuff, like not being distractful or anything, it can actually create a better user experience, in my opinion. Excuse me. So, and then if you're like a content creator or you're managing social media account, sometimes you might have a need for like a nice quote or a typography or some illustration picture. You can always use the 3D tools to create something that pops out, like you can see here with the lettering layout. And of course, there are infographic stuff and iconography, where you can really use the 3D and the animation and motion to convey the change in the data in a way that isn't really possible if you count in the third dimension you can use here. So that's about that. And now we are moving a little bit into a little bit more complex things like the product design. So whenever a new product is launched, of course, you need some nice imagery to make it shine. Apple does a really amazing job on their landing pages with this. I think they're using a lot of photography, like detail photography, but I think there are renders in play too, and other product landing pages as well. So the main benefit of this, of course, is the flexibility, like showing the product in multiple angles. You can show it assembled, disassembled, whatever you want, basically. And apart from that, you can do live 360 views, like here you can see on the car dashboard, or you can present your product in more creative way. Very good use case is, of course, the e-commerce. So if you're selling basically something like furniture or let's say sneakers, there's possibility to show this live on your website as a product, which again brings a real user experience value to the customer to be able, for the products that are their design and shape is important, to be able to really turn them around and look how they're designed. And yeah, this is basically my favorite part, using 3D to conveying ideas you might have about the motion in app or some transitions or some user interaction. Because sometimes you can talk a half day about the idea you have in your head, but the moment you are delivering the concept, and it can be just the video playing on your phone that you're showing to stakeholders or your colleagues or clients, they can immediately see and understand what are you trying to build or what are you trying to create. This way you can really tap into like new interaction design and try to come up with new ways how to interact with applications or whatever. And of course, then you can use 3D for placing the existing UI concepts. So they can be 2D, built in After Effects or something, and you can place them on the 3D objects. Like here, you can see the car dashboard. So you are broadening the context in which you are delivering the message of this interaction and the whole concept. So yeah, they all have in common one thing, and that's basically a proof of concept. So you have this idea, you want to see how it works, you want to see how it feels when you hold it in hand, you know, and swipe around. So 3D can be a great tool to do that, and you can come up with some new cool interactions. Like here you can see with this guitar, when you enable the menu, you actually see the guitar in the full 3D. So I think it looks really cool. So there are like the main categories that I like to think about in terms of 3D lately and for following years. And you might ask, like, what's in it for me? Why this should be important for me? Most of all, like learning new skill always leads to like new opportunities. And if you're delivering some design services to a client or something, that's immediately a new service you can offer on top of the usual stuff that you are offering to your clients. It can bring you whole new career opportunities, or you can expand on your existing roles in your current company and really elevate your status in terms of like being someone who has this particular skill. So that can be very beneficial, of course. And if you're a content creator, or you're running your website or selling something on your website, you don't need like third-party content for illustrative purposes. And so you don't need to wait for any delivery of the assets or anything. You can be responsible for building a nice illustration yourself. And of course, that comes with no licensing. So the stuff you build is of course yours, so you can do whatever you want with it. And one of the most important things, at least for me, this is why I was drawn into 3D the most, because you can create beautiful illustrations without drawing skills. And I really can't draw a beautiful illustration by hand. I don't have like the muscle memory built for drawing. I don't draw every day. So it would be really hard to me to like convey some message with drawing. And even with tools like Photoshop and Illustrator, you need to kind of create all the gradients, all the lights yourself. So definitely 3D can help with that. It take care all of the shadows for you, lights and coloring. And I don't want to mislead you. It's not like super simple. You of course need to learn some skill and all the ins and outs of lighting. But once you like find your sweet spot for lighting particular scenes, it gets much better. So the learning curve isn't that steep, basically. And I included these kind of images on purpose, because here you can see how you don't need too complex shapes to create something beautiful. These are basically just spheres and boxes organized in some nice and abstract way. Of course, there are some layout rules behind that and some composition to make it really pop. And there's beautiful lighting in place and some textures, but at the same time, it's just basic shapes that are organized in some way and rendered through the software, and you get something beautiful right away without like spending hours on the modeling. So yeah, I think that's really cool about 3D design, that you can really start simple. So yeah, right now I would like to launch the Blender. So I will try to share my Blender screen if that's okay. And I want to show you around a little bit. Excuse me.
Looking good.
Great, thanks. So this is something you can see when you first launch Blender. We can delete the stuff we can see right away. And I won't be like going in too much details. This isn't basically a tutorial to follow. I will try to explain as much as I can along the way, but this is just for like demonstration purposes of what can be built in 15 minutes with Blender. So I want to create a little park illustration. I really want to use just the boxy shapes and one or two simple tools to create some quick illustration for my website or something. So let's start with the basic shape like a plane, and I will use the scaling. I will use a lot of keyboard shortcuts if that's okay. I think I can launch a screencast right here, so you can see on the bottom right of the viewport what I press. So I hope that helps. Right now I'm going to extrude this real quick, and I'm going to duplicate the plane and separate it from the object. So this way I can reuse existing geometry. I don't have to like create new objects and place them all around. And right now I will make a cut here and again try to separate this and continue with extrusion. And it might look like I'm going a little bit too fast and using all those shortcuts if you've never seen Blender before or never done 3D, but I'm doing really simple stuff like creating planar objects and extruding them up. Like this is very simple thing. The only thing you need to know is what to press basically on your keyboard. So right now I want to modify this a little bit. So I will move some things around so it's better organized. And I want to create a bench here. So let's move the cursor and I will create a plane again. And I use planes a lot. Basically, when I create something new, I either start with the plane, box, or a sphere, some basic shape, and then I derive the whole object out of that. Now I will make cuts and use something called beveling, which will enable me to do this real quick, and I can delete the new geometry that I created there. So I have a new shape here. I can select all, and again, just like before, I can just extrude this. And then I can select all while still in the edit mode and move this up where I probably want the bench to be. And then while still on the side view, I can just duplicate this and rotate 90 degrees and place it somewhere here. So this will serve as a base for a bench. And again, this will be very geometrical. I don't want any different angles there. I will work with only 90-degree angles. So right now I can tab out and create a new object. And again, surprise, surprise, it'll be a plane. And I can move this to a side. Let's check this from the front where it sits. And I can enable something called mirror modifier. So again, this is something you learn along the way where all the functions and modifiers are. And they can be very convenient. You can just mirror something on the axis and it will basically, this is the starting point for the object, so it will mirror it on the other side. And I can extrude this behind, extrude this once again, and extrude this up. So I think this can work as some kind of a basic bench design. Maybe we can make this a little bit larger. I will apply the scale and parent this so it moves together when I need to move something. Okay, and now I really like to have a curve here. So I will again take one object and duplicate this edge. So I'm reusing the geometry in its original place, so I don't have to move things around so much. And I can cut this few times and bevel again. So you can see this is absolutely the same technique that I used on the bench here. And this way I can create a quick curve here and continue by making a tree. So let's create with some plane. This will serve as a base of our tree and we'll just extrude this up. Maybe we don't need this so wide, something like this. And I want to do some stylized branches here. So let's move the cursor and I will create a plane here. And I will use something called snapping here, this little magnet icon. And I can switch this to face. So we are going to be snapping to faces and I want to align rotation. And what this will do is when I try to move this, it will just snap to something and align the rotation. And that's something I want to do. So I want the branch to be growing up this way. And I will now just disable the snap, make this smaller, extrude. Let's make a cut and extrude this up. And the way I want it to snap there is I can now make a link to duplicate. So it'll be the same object. I can rotate, make a duplicate, and while holding Control and still the snapping options active, I can just snap a new branch here. Now I can rotate to the other side, create a duplicate there as well. and on the other side as well. So this way we can have a really quick stylized 3 branches modeled. And now I will create a crown by moving the cursor and just placing a cube there, scaling it down, and I will just duplicate the cube around. I'm doing this with all the D's, so it's linked. So if I decide to modify the cube, I'm modifying them all at once. And now I will just distribute some of these cubes all around the tree to give it some volume. And you can always play a little bit more with the positioning. I don't want to take too much of your time here, so this will be very rough, but I think this can work as a tree. And we can now move to create some kind of brush or something here. And again, I will just use cubes. And this way you can build whole environments, whole cities, anything you want basically with just a cube. If you stylized anything on the level of how it would look built from cubes, you can always do this. And there are 3 techniques you need to use to actually do that. So that's why I was emphasizing the thing that you can really start simple and basically in a few days learn a new tool and right away use it to build some new design. There's no need to train years for something really sophisticated. And now I want to create a little lamp here. So I will again start with the plane, scale it down. And let's extrude this up a little bit. And I will use a new tool here. It's called Inset. I'll drag this up, inset again. So this is another technique where you basically just insetting and extruding something to create more complex structure. And then we can select this, inset individually, and extrude along normals. And we are all set. Basically, we have a lamp here. So this is for the modeling. And right now, the important thing is to create some kind of a background here and place a camera. I use a plugin called IsoCam. If you would like to play with Blender later and you would like to have this, you can go to my YouTube channel, and almost under every video I have a link to this add-on, so you can play with it. And I will try to use the true IsoCam so we have nice orthographic view without any perspective distortions. And let's now change the resolutions here so we can see how the final composition will look like. And we can now change the rendering into material preview. This will look a little bit too bright, but it will get better when we start to adding some colors. And I will create a really quick blue background here. And let's create a new material for the ground here. And the way this works in 3D, you have some object and you apply these kind of materials that contain all of these properties where you define how this looks, how it behaves, if it's glossy, if it's rough, or anything like that. So that's for the ground, and I will need something gray for the road here, and for the curb as well. We can easily duplicate this as well and make it a little bit darker. And we'll need, of course, some green color here and maybe some green color here as well, but with a little bit darker shade. So let's duplicate this again and make this a little bit darker, and we can use this here as well. And you can see if I have link duplicates, I can easily apply the material on all of these boxes. So everything in Blender or any other basically 3D design tool is built around like giving you the best possible options to do things effectively. And right now we can just select all of this and join it to one object, so we don't even have to parent it. And now let's create a new material for the lamp. And we can assign multiple materials to one object. So if I go into the edit mode and I can see I have these faces still selected, I can just click the plus icon and create a new material, change its shader to emission, and actually give it some light. And click assign, and it will shine bright. But to actually see that, we'll need to change some render settings. But first, let's give this bench some red color. Something like this, and some color here. Okay, I really like this so far. Let's go to the camera view. And right now we can go to the render settings here, and you can see we are in the render engine Eevee. This is a little bit advanced stuff. There are multiple ways how you can render object. I will now use the Eevee, and we can enable some things like ambient occlusion, which will fill these cavities with some more shadows. We can enable bloom, which will make this emission materials shine and do this bloom effect, and some screen space reflections. And basically we are good to go. And now I will enable scene lights and scene world here for the preview. So this is actually something that would be rendered right now, and I want to give it more light, and this is a crucial part. And basically that's kind of my like a secret sauce a little bit, where I use a lot of area lights and approach lighting not in a way that how this would be lighted in a real world, because I'm creating illustrations, I'm working with color, and I'm trying to achieve some results. So I'm basically trying to paint with light, and that's the main difference. And that's the main thing that made the difference for me when I realized that I can approach lighting not like from a photographist point of view, but more as a creative tool to paint scene with light. And now if I place some basic area light and give it some more strength, you can see we have now some nice preview. And actually, you know what, let's switch to cycles so we have a better preview, because the shadows are blinking weirdly in Eevee. And now this is something we would get if we render this out into the image. And this already looks quite nice. I think if you would like to use this on some kind of illustration or website design or anything, but we can sprinkle it up with more light. And that's the thing I was actually talking about. If we duplicate this area light, and I will just release this, switch the pivot to the 3D cursor, and rotate on the X 45 degrees, and once again on the Z axis. Now I have two lights in the scene, and you can see right away how this makes a difference. It will create this nice highlights here and nice gradients on the large surfaces. And you can even go a little bit further when trying to play with color. So if I go like an orange color here, you will see this nice gradient will start to appear here, and you can go even something more stronger. And the third thing for the lighting, so far it was like realization that you can paint with light and you don't need to have only one or two lights in the scene. You can do whatever you want, basically, just don't overdo it. And the second thing was placing the lights in angle that will create these nice gradients, and you can add some colors to that. And the third thing is to actually play with the world ambience and to incorporate some world color here. So I will change this to blue or a little bit of violet, and you can immediately see how the shadows are filled with blue tones. But not only those, all the colors change. So basically, when you're trying to bring more color into the world around your scene, let me show you how this looks. This is the world color around, and when I change it, it will affect the light, and this will actually blend the colors together. And that's the real difference when you're making something. If you can make it distinctive but blend a little bit together, it will get you the better results. So yeah, I don't know if we are 15 minutes, but this is something that you can really build in a really short time. And you can basically duplicate this and try to make a tile with only 2-3 small brushes. You can incorporate some flowers, which basically might only look like a few boxes instead of leaves, and one red box as a flower, you know. So if you go really low on the detail and think in the abstract shapes, you can get really beautiful illustrations done within minutes, and it's really not hard to learn. So yeah, this is basically the demonstration of the Blender and the ease of use of 3D when you want to create something really simple. So I will now switch back to the presentation. Okay, so that was the illustration. Here you can see something I prepared. Um, I've went over this one time before. It's a little bit different, but it's the same principle. And it also took like 15 minutes to create. So really simple stuff. So my recommendations here would be to really start simple. Don't be discouraged when you see like super complicated art on the Instagram or Dribble or something. Like try to really think, what can I do with the way I see colors and shapes to make something with the tools I already know to use, or tools I can learn to use in basically a few hours. um, I recommend using Blender. There are multiple discussions around this, like whether to use Maya, Blender, 3ds Max, whatever. Blender is only one free, and it's safe to say that it's on par with all of these professional softwares. It's funded by large companies like Epic Games, like NVIDIA and stuff like that. So they're really up there. It's not like you would be missing out on some features. I really recommend going Blender. It's really flexible. And the next thing I would really recommend is to build your skill as you go through the project. And that's something I already said, like start simple and then pick up new tools and new skills as you go for the new projects. Don't try to learn everything at once. Try to basically make something and learn from that. And of course, I would recommend building stuff you like for fun, whether it's pop culture or something you want to recreate, something from Star Wars or whatever. If you have fun with it and you really like the theme, it will just go much easier. So I want to show you a little bit how I used this. I showed you right now to get ahead a little bit in my career. So as I said, I was UI designer for more than 10 years. And then I started to dig into the 3D world more and more and more. And I really wanted to share the work. I wanted to challenge myself to create more. And the best way to do that is actually to start creating daily and sharing it with the audience, getting the feedback, and basically being a little bit accountable for the content you put out there. And this will ultimately make you go really faster while developing your skills. So you will get better much faster, and you will be focused on your style and on the things you're making. And while I was doing this, I really challenged myself. I told myself, like, I will now create a 3D render every day for 6 months, and I really made it. I never missed one day. I even posted pre-made stuff from the vacation. So this led to some amazing audience feedback I've never expected, and people really started to like inquire about how I do things, how I did the lighting, what software it was done in. So I thought a little bit about this, and I was always like interested in many things. all at once. So I thought the course creation and actually teaching some of these skills might be a good career path for me. Um, and this led to a course creation and ultimately my professional freedom. But for you, this might be something else. So as I said before, whether it's about like a career upgrade, or you want to do a freelance, or you want to sell 3D assets on the marketplaces, or you want to create merchandise or sell prints online, and you're very serious about your art, you can do that, and your path can be the same. The important thing is to start creating every day, to challenge yourself, learn new stuff, and share it with people every day. The more the better, basically. Right now I'm not doing this every day, so after a while you can like let it go a little bit, but it's a little bit good to go extreme in the beginning and to like do these little check marks in the calendar that you can do this every day. It will change your habits. So this is something how I used 3D to basically change my career, and yeah, you can too. So I already have several student stories, and I've asked some of my students if I can share their stories, and with some of them I even became friends. So Reijo is a UI designer from Estonia, and he was among the first who enrolled last year, and he had no prior experience with 3D whatsoever. And you can see the stuff he creates here, and this one with the Halloween theme is one of the first of his own illustration he created after completing the course. And it was amazing, like right away. It's simple, it's stylized, but it had the atmosphere. I really loved it. So he had a good start already, but if you look at the other images, like where he was able to get in several months or a year, I think the coffee machine is his latest one. That's something really amazing. And yeah, what he did was he really committed. He was excited for the 3D. He fell in love with it, and he committed to create every day too. So he's following a similar path, and now he has a new role in his career, where 50% of his time involves 3D creation, and he even helps to shape like the brand communication along the way and create like these beautiful landmarks and stuff for their website. He got a lot of freelance inquiries, and he basically reached out to me in a few months that to let me know that it really changed his career life. So yeah, this was like a really strong moment for me when something like this happens. And there are more guys like that. There's Brian, Nicolas. Um, we have a group where we basically share our works, ask for feedback, help with the course content and stuff like that. You can see Brian's work here on the left. Nicolas even used Blender to design his new kitchen. So yeah, and these are absolutely amazing. And again, these guys had no prior experience with 3D before. It was just the course and the group and the hard work. So yeah, I think these stories are amazing, and it really fueled me to create more and to bring more content. So, and this is the screenshot from the group. This is the real screenshot I took this week, where Scott, one of the students in the group, shared his story where basically at Microsoft he got involved with by bringing 3D on the table. He got involved with more responsibility and more opportunities. So that was amazing to hear too. Um, yeah, and you can too basically start right away and join this group. We are very active. Now, if I may, I would like to um, show you a little bit about the course. So you can see what is it about. So it's called Become a 3D Illustrator, sorry, because that's ultimately what this is about. And you can find 20 plus hours of content in 5 episodes. You can see the result of these episodes here on the left. And the best thing about this is that's immediately like 5 ways and styles you can incorporate with your designs. So there's a lot of like low poly flat shaded stuff. There's more like a cool cyberpunk thing, and then some smooth modeling using of textures and more photoreal stuff, but still at the on the side of a stylized illustration. So these are the works that you would be creating, and you get handle files. So I've created files that are basically chopped into different chapters. So wherever you feel like you want to skip a little 5-minute chapter and continue where I left off, you can just pick up the handle file. So every episode has from 10 to 20 handle files in different stages of the project. There are bonus chapters on animation, lighting, and rendering, and I bring some more bonus content as Blender gets developed. So if there's some new feature, I talked about that. And there are some asset packs. Most of them are cars or vehicles because I created a lot of them the last 2 years. So you get all kinds of like cars, airplanes, and stuff you can play around with. And I think the very important thing is the access to the private group. You can see the screenshot what's happening there. This was taken yesterday, basically. So again, we are very active and willing to help. And then you can get 140 and counting scenes for download. Since I'm still doing this, I'm still creating like a new art every week, and I'm putting it out there. So there's a section with the course that contains all of these scenes and renders I create every week. So you can basically open any my file and look around how I do stuff and how it's figured out. So that's in short for the course. Maybe I can like really show you what's inside.
Well, we definitely have some questions from the audience that I'd love to make sure that we get those answered.
Yeah, of course, no problem. We can do that.
Well, so one question which we often get is people want to understand what's the difference between your free training, which you have, and what they're going to get in the course.
Yeah, I think like a depth of detail and explanation and the theory behind the stuff I do. So I have some free content on YouTube there. I put stuff out there every week, but it's in the form of a time-lapsed process videos. And then I do sometimes the commentary videos, but I really want to like put them in a short format so they're quicker. And then with the course, you like get full 5 hours of really detailed content to go through. And I really explain every in and out of the software, of the tool, of the decisions I make behind the lighting and everything. So it's something I can't do on YouTube in terms of a timeline format, basically.
Makes sense. So looking here in the questions, we had a good one here from Steen. So Steen says, I second Andre's question. I have a lot of difficulties getting lights set up properly. So when you're setting up lights, are there any kind of quick tips which you can offer beyond what we saw today?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, you might want to think about whether it's a daylight scene or a night scene. If you're going for a daylight scene, then the sunlight is a nice thing to consider. If you want like a directional light with really sharp shadows, and then you can like incorporate these other area lights around your scene while telling the story that fits the context of something that you're creating. So for example, if you're creating a car chase scene, you might incorporate red and blue light out of bounds of the scene just shining through to suggest that there might be a police car or something. And yeah, so basically try to convey a story with these lights, try to paint with the light more. If you feel like there's a really dark place in your scene and you need to emphasize that, you can put a point light in there and really try to hide it behind something, like play around. It's not an exact thing to do a lighting. So yeah, it's a lot of iterations basically, but what they have in common is like to try to paint the story with the light. And of course, if it gets messy, I recommend turning everything off and starting again, basically. So if you like in one way and you get stuck, it's always good to like turn off everything, save it to a collection somewhere, disable it for a while, and try to build a new set of lighting even 3-4 times.
Those tips, Roman. Now we had another question. This is a beginner question from Drew. Who says, my question, I think I'm still a newbie in 3D. I'm not ready or really into some specific type of 3D. So how would what kind of thing would you recommend getting started with here?
Yeah, so the stuff I already shown in the workshop, like
Hmm.
getting to try some illustrations with the cubic shapes and getting to know the 3D tool, getting to know the lighting, the materials, while keeping the modeling really simple is a good way to start. That's the way how I approach it in the course as well, where there's very simple first episode that really just gets you through your first contact with Blender to your first render in first hour, basically. So you already have something you can do.
Nice. Okay. Now we did have another question here from Roberto. So Roberto says, how different are your rates when designing 2D versus 3D? How do you establish how many hours would a 3D project take and the pricing for that?
um, I don't really try to differentiate too much between the techniques. I think 2D can be quite difficult to deliver itself. It's just something a little bit different, and some kind of projects might require more 2D, and some kind of project might require the flexibility I was talking about, where you can do different angles and try to play with the stuff more. And I don't do much of a 2D lately, so I couldn't probably say how I would rate this differently. Um, what I would say basically when trying to rate a project is to not think only in terms of hours, but think about the things like the overhead and maybe risk involved, the stakes that are in place, if the timing is for the client really important and stuff like that, where you can get to a different rate, not based on like a level of technical difficulty you're doing when delivering, but more in terms of how valuable this is for the client and how much stakes are involved.
Nice, makes sense, and I appreciate you giving that kind of nuanced answer there. Now, there's actually something interesting. Um, so we had a question here from from AMN, and AMN says, "Do you approach all or most of your 3D projects in the same manner, or does each one have a different approach in terms of using tools, nodes, etc.?"
Yeah, so of course I gravitate towards like the similar techniques when I'm creating something. Uh, but sometimes I feel like I need to um, stray away from that. So every time I learn a new tool or learn a new technique, I try to bring it in and incorporate it. So it basically doesn't stay the same all the time. But really, it depends. Like if I'm creating my personal work or if I'm creating for the client. If I'm creating for the client, it all depends on the scope of the project, on the art direction that takes place. So the tools follow the target results. If I'm creating for fun and for myself, I'm trying to incorporate new things as I learn them, so I get better, basically.
Now, believe it or not, Roman, we actually, I think, have time for one more question. So, well, I'm going to pick one more question. And while we do, could I just get everyone in the chat to say thank you for Roman for really giving his time and his expertise and his energy with us so generously? So it's in the chat. If you could just say thank you, Roman. And again, if you're interested, just you can click right above the video to take a look at the course. And if you're watching this on the replay, you can click the button in the email to learn more about the course. But the last question, which I think we're going to have some time in here. Um, so Tolbeko says, apart from platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and ArtStation, what other avenues do you recommend we explore able to help exposure and get access to new communities?
Yeah, it really depends on the content you create. For me, the obvious choice was Dribble, since it's very designer oriented, it's very web design oriented, and I wanted to incorporate 3D into that. So that's a good space for that kind of content. And apart from that, you might want to consider LinkedIn if you want to deliver professional services. There might be a lot of exposure on LinkedIn if you study a little bit the ins and outs of the platform. Of course, there's TikTok there, which is kind of a bit tricky. I didn't figure out yet how to kind of do this kind of education content, but if you're like want to create animations and stuff like that, you can always do short animation clips for TikTok maybe. So there are a bunch of ways to consider. Apart from ArtStation, there's Behance, where if you have a larger project you might want to deliver case studies about, that's very useful platform for that. So it really depends on something you want to deliver.
All right, thanks, Roman. And we're seeing in the chat, everyone saying things like, thank you, Roman. Thank you so much. You're an inspiration. Suresh says, this has got me thinking differently about Blender. I can finally put my skills to use. Billy says, thank you so much, Roman. This workshop makes me want to continue my 3D journey. And Albert says, thank you, Roman. Your work is inspirational. So everyone can really is really appreciative of what you shared today. So Roman, any kind of last words? Where can everyone find you online and, learn more and follow you?
Yeah, so I go by Polygon Runway online, so you can find me on YouTube/Polygon Runway or Instagram/Polygon Runway, Twitter/Polygon Runway, LinkedIn/Polygon Runway, I think. So these are the main channels. You can reach out anytime, either on Instagram or in the YouTube comments. And yeah, if I would like to say something, that will be to go create and to really pick up something you want to do and like spark your creativity. It really can lead to ways you never imagined. And I really want to thank everybody for stopping by. I really appreciate it. You wanted to hear me talk about this stuff for an hour. So yeah, thank you everyone for stopping by.
All right. Thanks all. Take care, everyone, and hope to see you all on the other side.